raise your hand if you know someone who's gay.
En klappa hjärtat med friska slag på den ljusande framtida vår. Sjung om studentens lyckliga dag. Låt dem oss fröjdas i ungdomens vår. En klappa hjärtat med friska slag på den ljusande framtida vår. Inga stormar i vårt sinne, ännu otid havet alltid är vår rätt. Och lidelsens löften tronar vi knyta förbund i den nu. Där de härliga lagrarna gror, där de härliga lagrarna gror. Hurra! Inga stormar i vårt sinne, ännu otid havet alltid är vår rätt. Och lidelsens löften tronar vi knyta förbund i den mur. Där de härliga lagrarna gror, där de härliga lagrarna gror. Hurra!
Rector, fellow students, scholars, distinguished guests and speakers, friends of the Student Society of Bergen. Welcome to the opening meeting and program release for the fall of 2013. But most importantly, welcome to the Student Society of Bergen. My name is Christian Hemmestad Bjerke, and tonight I will function as the Master of Ceremonies and guide you through the opening of this meeting. As you've already noticed, we are conducting this meeting in English, and I've been told that there are some foreign students here today. Can I get a quick show of hands? Some international students? Okay, there are a few of you guys. Okay, but allow me then to quote the previous mayor of Bergen, Mr. Herman Friele. And he greeted the former US President Bill Clinton when he came to town with the following statement. Mr. President, welcome to Bergen, the capital of Norway. Allow me then to introduce the student choir. That's actually what they're called. They are some of our oldest and dearest friends, and no opening meeting is possible without them. I don't know how many of these guys are still enrolled at university. I've seen some of these guys at some of the parties, at most of the different faculties. But anyways, give the stage to Tore Johannessen, conductor for the student choir.
Dette veldig seremonielt. Så da vet noen av dere i hvert fall at nå skal alle reise seg. Så vi skal synge Gaudiamus Igitur. Gaudiamus Igitur, Juvenes sumus. Gaudiamus Igitur, Juvenes sumus. Postmodern juventutem, postmodestam senectutem, nos habebit humus, nos habebit humus. Vivat Academia, vivat professores, vivat Academia, vivat professores, vivat membram cordibet, vivat membra pledibet, semper sint in flore, semper sint
sind entflohen.
Now we are still awaiting our most distinguished guest. All Norwegian student societies have their own protectorate and monarch. In Oslo, there is the pig, aptly named. In Trondheim, there is the sheep. But between the seven mountains in Bergen, His Majesty the Hedgehog reigns supreme. In 1935, the year after the foundation of the Student Society of Bergen, His Majesty the Hedgehog found the Student Society worthy and ascended the throne. Kind, nocturnal and benevolent, this ruler has steadily inspired us for almost 79 years. Queen Elizabeth of England can take a hike. Fellow students, it is time to give praise and rejoice. His Majesty the Hedgehog, Erinaceus Europaeus Rex, first of his name, Warden of the West, source of inspiration and joy for the Student Society of Bergen, and protector of the realm. Let's all rise and sing Hymn to the Hedgehog, Pinnsvin Hymn.
Rødt-navns-Knut er kåt og mjuk. Rødt-navns-Knut, Rødt-navns-Knut, det finnes ikke noe som jager han ut. Jager han ut, jager han ut. Sulli-lullam, sulli-lu, sulli-lullam, sulli-lu, sulli-lullam, sulli-lu, sulli-lullam, sulli-lu, sulli-lullam, sulli-lu, sulli-lullam, sulli-lu. Rødt-navns-Knut!
Is it on? Oh. Hello. The Student Society of Bergen, as you now are now aware, we have a proud history, and our history is important to us. We were founded in 1934 by scholars and students at Bergen Museum. Now this was before the University of Bergen was founded, a fact we like to point out to the rector as often as possible. Our values and our mission has been the same ever since our founding. To gather students and academics for debate and reflection. And this brings us over to the present day and this meeting. Because while I am just a humble servant of His Majesty the Hedgehog, it is time to introduce tonight's host and our glorious leader. She is Preses of the Student Society of Bergen, the leader of the Student Society of Bergen, and she will guide you through the rest of the evening. Ida Torkjelsdatter Storhaug!
Hello, and welcome to this first meeting of this semester in the Student Society. All spring and all summer, the volunteers of the Student Society has been working hard to make this program, which you're all hopefully holding right now. The topics that we will take up for debate this autumn is really diverse, and I'm sure that everyone will find something to their liking in this booklet. The last thing we did before we sent the booklet to printing was choosing the front picture. Out of several dozen suggestions, we picked this one. It's taken by Maika Elam, who is a young Vietnamese photographer. In a series of photos called The Pink Choice, she has photographed Vietnamese couples of the same sex. Some of the pictures have a clear political message. The one we printed on our program, I just can't see the political message. It's just a really beautiful picture. In the picture, there's two men. And the one man is washing the other one's hair while he's reaching for his shampoo. The message to me is not a political one. When I see the picture, I think about the ordinary, everyday love that we have for each other. I think about the act of caring for one another. Love and care has no gender. It might sound a bit sentimental, talking about love when I'm in fact a member of a debate forum. But it's also love and care that holds a community together, like the one we have in the Student Society. We can argue violently and disagree fundamentally on politics, but we still care for one another. That is the definition of respect. It is also to acknowledge each other as part of a community. In Russia today, a group of people is not being acknowledged as part of the community. And that is the topic for today's meeting. The debate tonight is called No Pride in Russia. And the topic will be the recent developments in Russia for the LGBT rights. LGBT, I can say right away, stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans persons, or transgendered. We will talk about Russian homophobia, the anti-propaganda law, and the Russian government's stance on homosexuality. If you're on Twitter or Instagram, The hashtag is No Pride in Russia, one word. Tonight we will let the panel talk until approximately, for approximately an hour, so 7:30, and we will then take a 15-minute break. In part 2 of the debate, we will open for questions and comment from the audience. So, Anne, are you here? Can you please stand up? Anne will be administering the question round, so if you have a question or a comment, please contact her during the break. Let me please welcome the panel up to the stage. In the panel tonight, we have Martin Paulsen, who is postdoc in Russian at the University of Bergen. His research focuses on Russian culture after the fall of the Soviet Union. He is also chairman of the prize committee of the Rafto Prize. And this summer he published, together with Trine K. Haagensen, the book En punkebønn for frihet, which contains collections of translated literary texts, essays, and speeches. Next to him, we have Vyacheslav Samonov. He is a representative of the LGBT network of Russia. He's also a lawyer, and he works volunteer there with their legal assistance program. We also have with us Nikolai Artemenko, who is the chairman of the Student Union of St. Petersburg. Thank you. As you all know, over the summer, we read a lot in Norwegian media about the anti-gay movement in Russia. And I was wondering, Vyacheslav, if you could tell us a bit about what have happened lately.
Yes, thank you very much. God kväll. So I know. Well, I want to thank you that you devoted this event to Russia and to LGBT issues in Russia. It's very encourages us. Well, I represent here Russian LGBT Network. It's an interregional organization, an umbrella organization which covers different regions of Russia. And I would like you to tell I would like you to show the general atmosphere which exists in Russia nowadays about LGBT. On the 29th of June of this year, the St. Petersburg Pride was held in the center of the city with the participation of approximately 60 people in support of human rights and equality for people of different sexual orientation and gender identities. During this Pride, they found themselves, those participants, the subjects of abuse and physical assault at the hands of the nationalists. Having started the attack with vulgar verbal abuse, followers of various nationalist groups soon switched to beating the demonstrators and pelting them with stones and smoke bombs. Police officers at the site failed to act adequately in order to prevent the violence, leaving the demonstration participants in the position of having to defend themselves. Organizers and participants in the demonstration followed all requirements of the law. The goals and slogans, observance of civil rights for all, a ban on discrimination, fighting against hate crimes, marriage equality, etc., fully corresponded to the language and spirit of the Constitution of Russia. The event was lasting about 30 minutes, although the official time of which was sanctioned by the authorities was 1 hour and a half. After 30 minutes, the police started pushing the participants to buses, telling people that it's for their own security, that they take them from counter-protestants and leave them near subway stations. But the buses took the participants to 3 different police stations. Although the pride was allowed by the authorities, those people were detained for many hours and charged with two violations: participation in illegal mass demonstration and administrative offense, which can lead to fine of about 20,000 rubles, approximately 500 euros, and disobedience to lawful prescription of the police to stop the illegal demonstration, which provides such punishment as arrest up to 15 days. Fortunately, so far, the courts of first instance find the participants innocent of violations they were charged with by the police. Cases of about 30 participants were heard until now. In the beginning of July, the law on prohibition of homosexual propaganda was adopted on the federal level. By that time, it has been already adopted in about 10 regions of Russia. Just a week after the propaganda law was passed, State Duma pushed through another law banning gay foreign couples and single people from states which provide gay marriage from adopting Russian children. Groups of young people of about 16 years old, called themselves Occupy Gerontophilae, are chasing homosexual teenagers in different regions of Russia. They arrange dates with them, meeting them, they mock, humiliate them, make videos and put these videos in the internet. They threaten that they will disclose homosexual orientation of these teenagers to their parents and schoolmates. The activity of such groups has been lasting for over a year. The videos were open to public. The law enforcement bodies usually didn't do anything on the basis of parents' claims of these children. In fact, these actions fall under the article of extremism, which Russian authorities usually seek to apply to opposition forces. The Russian LGBT network prepared a comprehensive application to a number of official bodies with the demand to investigate the activity of such groups. The situation became known by one of the members of Russian parliament, who has also filed official request to prosecutor office and criminal investigation committee. So far, we know about 17 children suffered from these groups. We believe that there are much more cases that remain out of public eye, or when parents decided not to disclose the situation. At the present moment, the preliminary inspection is being proceeded. We don't know about the results yet of the inspection, but we hope that all of the offenders will be punished. It's interesting to mention that Occupy Gerontophilae is a follow-up of another group of adult people called themselves Occupy Pedophilae, led by a nationalist who has been previously found guilty in extremism. For a few years, they have been doing the same things with adult people, gay people. They feel in action of official bodies the impunity and the attitude of Russian authorities towards LGBT people. Due to information we have from the beginning of this year, there have been 14 applications filed in law enforcement bodies about the violent offenses committed on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. It is obvious that the number of such cases is higher. Only 4 investigations were started, and the authorities consider these offenses as ordinary, without hatred as an aggravated factor. The rest of applications remained without due examinations. Thank you.
Thank you. Nikolai, why is it that Russia feels so threatened by homosexuals?
I don't want to say that Russian society or Russian people are frightened of homosexuality. I think that, of course, it's kind of a traditional way of thinking of people, because Orthodox Church nowadays and the whole history of Russia has a very powerful position and was very influenced. And people still continue to think in orthodox and religious way of thinking. And the second, I think, reason is the lack of education in our society, because the very high percentage of Russian population is still thinking that homosexuality is an illness and it has to be treated. Only a small group of people who are liberal-minded and who are well-educated understands that this problem, that we have to do something. We have to educate our young generation. We have to educate our low-educated society in this question, and to include LGBT people into their normal community, because nowadays in Russia, in St. Petersburg and in Moscow especially, people who think that they're who support LGBT rights or who are members of LGBT movements, they're totally excluded from their social political process, because it's quite kind of illegal to promote your ideas on the streets and to say something about your sexual orientation. And of course, we have to educate, we have to promote this idea, we have to raise an awareness, especially in European countries, what, for example, LGBT network that Vyacheslav presented is doing every time. I want to say that me, as a chairman, as a president of Russian Students' Union in St. Petersburg, students don't care about this problem, and I can't say that it's bad. I can say that it's normal, because of course student society have a lot of local problems, and they often do not want to participate in social political life. But still, I think that we have to explain on the students level, on the school level, that's LGBT. What is LGBT? That they have the same rights, that everyone is equal, and everyone in our country have to have equal rights.
Martin, you told me that you just came from Minsk in Belarus, and you were staying at a conference there. And while there you also talked to university-educated people. And what stance do they have on homosexual?
I think this is one of the points where it's most difficult for Norwegians to understand the situation in Russia in particular, but also in Eastern Europe in general. It is the fact that we also see a lot of very highly educated people who speak out against the LGBT movement and their claim for equal rights. And what is surprising is that we see people with high education who repeat notions of being gay as being something that is a disease, something that needs to be cured. But also we see that people, and this is something we can come back to when we start looking at the law that we are discussing a little bit later. We also see that the people think that if young people are exposed to information about gay people, they will also become gay. So there's this idea that being gay is contagious, that it's an illness that you can catch. And to me, this is one of the kind of cultural clashes between our Scandinavian worldview and the worldview in Eastern Europe today. The idea of being gay as something that is a disease.
Nikolai, you're from the student movement yourself. Do you see that the students today have more tolerance towards gays than older people in Russia?
I think that young people, they're more educated in this point, and they know more about LGBT than their elder people who was raised in the Soviet Union and who actually doesn't know what this LGBT means. And when, for example, you go through the street in a small city and say that there are some people who have another kind of relationships, they will not believe you. And it's true. And the high percentage of our population simply don't know about this problem. I can't say that become more tolerant and less tolerant. It's another question. But that Vyacheslav already mentioned, unfortunately, last few years in Russia, start functioning very powerful and very aggressive nationalist movements that's really against of LGBT and against these kinds of expression, and they do very cruel things that Vyacheslav explained with their members or representatives of LGBT movements. They catch them, they film them, then some kind of make an interview with them, why you are gay, why you are, what's happened with you in your childhood, maybe you have some problems with your family that you become gay, and something like this. Then they posted these videos on Facebook, and the most dangerous thing that so many people, young people, like this video, reposted this video, and think that this way of thinking and this way of doing is a good way. I used to be a school teacher in a secondary school for several years. I was teaching Russian literature for the youngsters, 14, 15 years old. And my school wasn't the example of the high educated. It was rather, there were studied rather poor guys from different poor families and less educated. And I was really scared the first year when I understood. Then in my class were 25 people, and half of them, I don't want to say nationalists, but 14 years old, just imagine. They shared these kind of ideas, and when they heard the word gay, for 100% they will say something against it.
We'll come back to the nationalistic perspective as well. Martin, you wanted to comment?
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on because I think it's supported by statistics what Nikolai says about the attitudes towards gay. I think the Levada Center is the most well-respected opinion pollsters in Russia, and they have done research on this, and they found out that the most skeptic towards gay are men and men above the age of 50. So hopefully things might change, but there's certainly a tendency towards this being something of the older generation in opinion polls in Russia today.
Vyacheslav, would you describe the Russian culture as homophobic?
I wouldn't say that Russian culture is homophobic. I think that Russians are the same as any other people. And I should say, commenting the speeches of other participants, I should say that during the 90s, the rate of homophobia decreased. And during the beginning of 2000s, it also decreased. And only after during the second term of Putin and about the second part of 2000s, it became increasing. And we don't know why, but it became political homophobia. And the homophobia in the society is the reflection, I think, of the politics.
We will come back to that later. The interesting thing for us in Norway is to see how many Russians that defend the anti-gay law. And I would ask Martin, what kind of arguments do they use when they defend this law?
I think there are several arguments that come to the fore. I think one of them is this notion that I spoke about earlier about this looking upon this as a disease. But there's also the notion, and this is an important part of recent developments in Russia. We have seen, particularly after the fall of the Soviet Union, we've seen a dramatic decrease in Russia's population. At the highest, this decrease was at 700,000 persons a year, the decrease in the population of Russia. So this notion in Russia that the nation is at risk, that we risk, just disappearing as a nation. And in connection with this, people think that, okay, gay people don't get children. So in connection with the decreasing population, this is a problem for us. Of course, this is a total misconception, because the reason why they have a decreasing population is not connected to gay at all. It's connected to social problems, economical problems, a very high death rate, and so on. But this is in the discourse about the LGBT movement and understanding of it in Russia. It's very central. And another point which I think is more political is this understanding of being gay as something foreign, as something that comes in from outside.
Nikolai, you talked about this when you say that nationalist movements often have this fear of homosexuality. Do you notice that they use arguments of homosexuality being more European and more Western?
Yes, people in my country who understand the problem of LGBT movements, who understand that it's not disease, that it's ordinary situation, I think, and I know that they are more pro-European. And I think that why, for example, in Norway, you opened the students' conference with the topic of LGBT, because in Russia it's impossible to imagine that somebody start to discuss this topic in so huge, with so big amount of people. Because the Norway, I think, is one of the best examples of democracy. And you already have the freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of expression. But unfortunately in Russia we do not have all these freedoms. And that's why the problem of LGBT movements, of LGBT people are not so shaped in our country. But the question is why we discuss it in Russia, and why people start to react the last few years on LGBT laws, and why these laws were adopted the last few years. The question is, the answer is very simple, because Putin is already 12, 13 years in Kremlin, and he started to understand that something goes wrong, and the main problem that society starts to understand that something goes wrong. That's more and more people every year start to understand that lack of freedom of expression, freedom of assembly is not too good, and we have to move to another way. But how to make these people shut up? Of course, to form, I call them false agenda. And these stupid laws, like law of propaganda homosexuality, for example, this is a law that formed this false agenda. That's because people do not need to think about lacks of freedom. They have to think about gays. They have to think about religious feelings of the people or something like this. And let's discuss the court for Madonna. Maybe you heard something like this, because in St. Petersburg, a very stupid deputy in our regional parliament organized the trial against Madonna, because he thought that the concert in St. Petersburg was a propaganda of homosexuality. And people start to discuss this problem 2 months in newspapers, on TV. They forgot about the lack of all these freedoms that we have. They forgot about corruption. They forgot about falsification of elections. We are discussing Madonna and propaganda of some homosexuality the whole 2 months. That's the answer for the question why these stupid laws start to adopt in my country.
Sums up our debate in one answer. I wanted to ask the audience for an answer as well. Could you raise your hand if you know someone who's gay? Yeah. Martin,
I want to ask the same audience another question, if I may.
go ahead.
Is there anyone in this room under the age of 18?
That's good because in Russia you'll be detained.
Yeah. This is the very point that we are talking. The law that we will be talking about. This very event would be illegal in Russia if there were anyone in this room under the age of 18. So it puts things in perspective according to what Nikolai talked about, freedom of expression and freedom of speech in Russia under the new regulation.
Do we know how many gays there are in Russia today?
I've seen figures. There was a report written by a human rights organization called Agora on the situation for LGBT in Russia, and they named a figure of 7 million gays in Russia today. They did not use any way of supporting the figures. So, in my belief, it's a figure they have they have thought of a number, and they've come up with 7 million. I think it's very difficult to find any statistics that can support it, but 7 million, to my knowledge, would make up 5% of Russia's population today. So I'm not an expert in demographics, but that's the one number I've seen, and I think it would be very difficult to conduct any sociological investigation into it because it's connected with so much shame. Whenever you start talking to gay people, or whenever you start reading about the gay society in Russia, you realize that it's one thing is that it's difficult to come out and say openly that you are gay or lesbian or you belong to the LGBT movement. But another thing is that it's often also very difficult for the people themselves to realize or to admit to themselves that they are gay because it's connected with so much shame. So it's a very difficult question, and it's very difficult to say how many they are. But there's no reason to believe that there are fewer gays in Russia than there would be in Norway.
How is the gay community in Russia today?
So you mean the situation about the community?
The gay community, if it's open or underground or how is it socially to be gay?
It's becoming more and more open, but in general it is underground. They don't close. The authorities do not close gay clubs, but the situation is becoming worse and worse.
So they have meeting points in clubs and...
Yes.
You also, we talked earlier, Martin, about how these anti-gay groups that Vyacheslav was talking about, how they persecute young homosexuals at the internet, and what that means for the gay community.
It's, the stories that Vyacheslav told us about earlier are gruesome. I mean, one of the problems, of course, with being a part of the LGBT movement in Russia, when this has become the ghetto that it has become, it's difficult to be open about it. So people choose to use the internet to communicate to others. They choose this as a way of getting to know others. And what we have seen, especially over the last year, is that nationalist movements, as Vyacheslav told us, have organized regular hunts on gays on the internet.
They call it safari.
Yeah, exactly. So and this is a way of undermining the little security that gay people or LGBT people have experienced on the internet. For them, the internet was a kind of a free space. It was a space where they could openly talk to others, meet others, and discuss others. And what we've seen recently over the last year is that also this free area is now becoming unsafe, and they are humiliated in the worst ways on Facebook or on YouTube videos, and that's one of the recent trends we've seen that is very troublesome.
As part of the legal assistance program of LGBT Network, you also work with cases of homophobia and just that. What sort of complaints do gays have?
Well, among the last cases are the cases about the detainees on the St. Petersburg Pride on 29th of June. Well, among other cases are cases about immigration. So many people ask us to help them to immigrate in Russia. Also violent crimes, hate crimes, which are not investigated properly in Russia. Discrimination at work, family issues, when relatives try to take children from LGBTs. Well, it's very wide range of cases.
Because in what degree do you see that the authorities persecute violence against gays in Russia? To what degree do the authorities charge people when they commit violence against gays?
Well, I can't say that they do not prosecute them, but if they start investigation, they investigate it as an ordinary crime without hatred, as an aggravated factor. And usually these crimes are not investigated properly, as I said. Well, there was a case in Voronezh, there was also some kind of pride, and one LGBT activist was assaulted. And the guy who assaulted him was convicted to 2 months of labor. I don't know how to say obligatory labor, yeah. 2 months. Although it was hate crime, of course.
Yeah, the same report that I referred to earlier by this human rights Agora reported 56 hate crimes against LGBT people over the 7 years from 2006 to 2013. And what they reported was that one of the biggest problems is that the police often refuse to take reports from people that have been attacked, or when they do actually take these reports, they refuse to take action, or they refuse to connect it to the fact that the people that have been attacked are gay. So there's very much a problem on several levels. You could see that on the one hand, the LGBT community in Russia suffer from a certain tendency of homophobia. They are attacked mainly by two groups. You could say that on the one hand there are the nationalists, and on the other hand are Orthodox activists, you could say. And the ways that these people attack the LGBT community are a bit different. The Orthodox activists do this in a very symbolic manner. They throw eggs or ketchup or kind of try to grab the flags from people trying to demonstrate or do their gay pride actions, while the nationalists are much more violent. They are the people who tend to beat people or are suspects of the instances we have where people have actually been killed for being gay. So there are two levels or two groups that are the main suspects in hate crimes against gay. So that's the one level. And the next level is the failure from the side of the Russian state to protect gay people. And I think it was very well demonstrated by Vyacheslav in the opening when he said that he had police standing next to this gay pride and they refused to take the proper action. Their job as a police is to protect the gay people from the nationalists. And we far too often see that this is not the case. They fail to take the appropriate action.
Which is that when someone contacts you and they have a similar problem to what Martin depicts now, what do you say to them? How can they, if if they are, sorry. If someone has done a criminal offense to someone gay, and the police doesn't react, what can you, as a legal assistant, say to them?
Well, we can appeal this refuse to start investigation to court, of course, and we do these things. After that, we can appeal the decision of the court, and usually at the end the police start investigation, but it is very long. It takes a long time usually, and when it comes to court for hearing, well, the court sentence is very low.
During the last weeks on social media in Norway, there has been an open letter from the British comedian Stephen Fry. I don't know if you read it, Nikolai. In this open letter to the British Prime Minister, he compares how gays in Russia are treated like Jews in Nazi Germany, and he says that we shouldn't have the Olympics in Russia. But what I wonder about is what you think about the comparison of Jews in Nazi Germany and gays in Russia.
I like Stephen Fry. I met him in St. Petersburg when he was there and met with the author of this homophobic law, Vitaly Milonov. It was a historical meeting. Vitaly Milonov, the author of the homophobic law, and Stephen Fry, the most known openly gay. And they shake their hands. Of course, after this, I think Vitaly Milonov go to the shower and wash their hands and something like this. But of course, I disagree with Fry in this point. I know what's Holocaust and what's happened with Jewish people in special camps. I was in a Svensson 2 times. I saw how it looks like, and I know the history of this. And of course, it's no comparison with nowadays situation in Russia with gays.
Particularly, he said he talks about how you make a group into scapegoats.
What?
Scapegoat, it's I'm lucky I have some helpers today.
I think that, of course, the problem of the gay community, of LGBT community, it's mine. Wow.
Now I can all tell you to switch off your cell phones.
The problem of the gay community, LGBT community in our country is rather shape, but it's not so on a so high level as it, for example, in some Islam countries, for example, because I think it's my personal opinion. Maybe Vyacheslav will not agree with me, but still it's my opinion that LGBT community will not have so many problems in Russia if they not solve the political problems by the gender, by the orientation. Because more and more, year on year, me and some of my colleagues and many people actually start to think that if you're gay, you start to solve your political problems, start to raise there some questions on the political arena using the LGBT flag and using the demonstration, because many times when I was participating in protests in St. Petersburg, protests against falsified elections, against detention of somebody, and I was detained many times in Russia, and every time I see many rainbow flags, with these rainbow flags supported political prisoners, supported or doing something against falsified elections and so on. I think that everything is okay if if LGBT community will be on the border, if they protect their rights only in the field of the self-realization. And me, my colleagues, and all liberal community will help them in this problem. But when it goes to the other side, in the political side, when they start to participate in politics using the rainbow flag, I think it's already something wrong. And I think that LGBT community do not mustn't go this line, and in this case it will be more or less normal.
Vyacheslav, what do you say about this? Is not being gay a political?
Well, I would disagree with this opinion because I think that the LGBT issues is also a political problem. Because if we don't have some fundamental freedoms, as freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, which are which we call a demonstration, including demonstrations where Nikolai participated, we cannot provide LGBT rights. So these are fundamental. It's a base we want to create. So that's why we deal with politics.
Do you also have a comment, Martin?
Well, I think it's a very important question, and an important question for understanding the contemporary Russian political picture, and especially when it comes to the oppositional movement. I think it's and it was something that actually Pussy Riot pointed out in one of their first announcements when they launched their group a couple of years ago. And it's one that it's important to work on several fronts at the same time. We cannot wait to solve the LGBT issue until we have solved the other questions. We need to work on all fronts. So in this aspect, I would very much agree with Vyacheslav that we need to see that all these questions are solved on the same time. We can't wait to solve the LGBT issue until the others have been solved. And the human rights of gays are on the same level as the human rights of others in the Russian society. And I don't think that Nikolai would disagree with this.
I'm totally agree with what you say, but of course, without the freedom of expression, without the rights of LGBT, it's impossible to build the strong civil society. When the gay people are excluded from the civil society, of course, it's kind of a criminal. It's criminal. But when and it's not about LGBT network that present Vyacheslav, but I heard from many LGBT members of other LGBT organizations in Russia that they want to have their own party, they want to have own seats in the parliament, they want to make decisions on the political arena using, as I said, the gender. I think this point is not right. I think, of course, we have to fight all together for LGBT rights. We have to fight for freedom of expression of everyone in our country. But I think that when you use your gender, as I said, for decision-making on a political field, I think it's already another story. And we have to think about this, or we have to maybe slow down. Because more and more, when we start to provoke our government, we know that our country and our government is very unstable now, and when we provoke it by these kind of actions, we can lose. I think not only this small rise of democracy that I think we will have in our country nowadays, but we can go to the big gap of the dictatorship.
We've talked a lot about the anti-gay law, but not really talking about what it is. Martin, I know you've been looking at the wording of the law. Could you please explain to the audience what the law actually means?
Well, the law is named. The law is about the protection of children in Russia against information which may hurt their health and development. So what happened in June was that we got an amendment to this law, and a law that already existed. And the amendment was about the so-called propaganda of non-traditional sexual relations among minors. So it became a punishable offense to propagate for what is called non-traditional sexual relations among minors, among people under the age of 18. So the propaganda, in the understanding of this law, or in the words rather of this law, is the act of distributing information among minors that is aimed at creating non-traditional sexual attitudes. So it's an understanding that it's actually possible to create non-traditional sexual attitudes among minors. So the second point is that this propaganda makes non-traditional sexual relations attractive. So this is also forbidden. And it's also forbidden to promote the equality of social value of traditional and non-traditional sexual relations. And lastly, it's illegal to create an interest in non-traditional sexual relations among minors. So we have a law that consists of in principle 4 different points, and it's about there's some perhaps you could say key phrases to the law, and one of them is propaganda. What is propaganda? And the second one is of course non-traditional sexual relations. There's a major problem, of course, with this latter term, non-traditional sexual relations, because what many believe it does is to equate homosexual and lesbian relationships with pedophilia in the Russian context. So it's what it does is it puts everything into a big bag and says that all this is equal in the understanding of the law.
I also find it difficult to understand the word propaganda and what situation that would apply. So since Vyacheslav, you're a lawyer, I had some examples and I wanted to check if they're illegal or not in Russia. Is it illegal in a classroom to state that Tchaikovsky was gay?
Well, I really doubt that it would be illegal, but it's really vague notion, propaganda, because it's really a subject of arbitrary application of this notion of this law. And if you want some examples, this federal law hasn't been applied so far.
So the law passed in the Duma or the
in
national...
Duma, yes, on federal level, it hasn't been applied yet. But some regional laws, analogous laws, or similar, were applied. And the practice of application of these laws is very controversial. And for example, in 2012, the Justice of Peace of Kostroma considered that single picket with a poster "Who will protect gay teenagers" near children's library did not constitute homosexual propaganda. The same demonstrator was convicted under St. Petersburg law for having held up a sign that read, "Homosexuality is not a perversion. Grass hockey and ice ballet are." He was convicted.
And also, I've read some articles that states that holding hands in the street would be illegal by this law.
I really doubt that it would be illegal, but I wouldn't recommend.
Yes,
Just-
because also when we met earlier, Martin, and talked about this, and we talked about how this law and the words they use are really vague. It's difficult to understand when they apply and how and who get who can be charged with homosexual propaganda, and why have they made a law that is so unclear and vague?
I think it is a general problem of laws that regulate the activities of civil society in Russia, and it's something that we see all over the field that laws are intentionally vague, so that the civil society organizations will stay as far away from the problem as possible. Because if the civil society organizations, if the NGOs or the LGBT activists knew how far they could go, they would go thus far and stop there, because they don't want to be fined or they don't want to be put in prison. But when the law is unclear, they understand that they need to keep a bit further away from that line in order not to be fined, in order not to be detained. So it is a vagueness that is put there, in my opinion, and not only mine, but in a general understanding, that is put there in order to limit the scope of activity of civil society organizations and activists.
Nikolai, so what Martin is saying now is that Russian authorities use the laws to regulate individualities. What do you think about that interpretation?
Not only individualities. I will tell you a rather funny story, I guess Vyacheslav remember it. We have a milk company in St. Petersburg that named Country House, as I remember, something like this. It's a very popular milk company, and all milk products, most of all milk products produced by this company. And on the picture of the pockets with milk, you can see this country house, the cat doing something grainy, it's doing milk, some covers, and behind all this thing, there was a rainbow. There was no problems before, but after adopting this law of propaganda homosexuality, this company get rid of this rainbow because they were afraid that they will be fined for this and the product will be less popular in the community. That's the example how our stupid laws influence on the community and influence on the society. And people really believes now that rainbow is symbol of rainbow is illegal now, because we have many kindergartens in St. Petersburg that named rainbow. And I really heard from the director of one of kindergarten that named Rainbow that he said that I want to rename my kindergarten because I'm afraid.
One of the things that I found most strange when I did research for this debate is the change in Russian politics. Because I read that in 2006, Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Sukov, who is still Deputy Prime Minister as far as I can understand, he nobody knows.
You don't remember?
No, it's not Prime Minister. We know who that is.
She wasn't.
There was a similar law raised to the National Congress or the Duma, and he called it back because he said that it was contradicted to Russia's constitution. And he said it was contradictive because it said that it's not allowed to criminalize the propaganda of a non-criminal behavior. And it's not criminal being gay in Russia, and therefore you can't criminalize to propagate against homosexuality. But 7 years later, almost the same wording gets passed through the Duma, and this time all the votes go in one direction. And for me, it's a really strange development. In such short years, so much have changed. Martin, what have changed?
Have I got time for the entire history lecture? No, it's an important point. I mean, the history of homosexuality is in Russia. It's not one-sided. It has not been forbidden through the entire history of Russia to be gay until after the Soviet Union. So, in contrast to many other countries, there was a long time in the history of Russia when there were no legal reactions against same-sex relationships. And there have been more liberal periods, and there have been more strict periods. There was a criminal law against being gay in the Russian Empire in the 19th century. These laws were suspended with the revolution in 1917, but they were reintroduced in
But what I'm actually wondering is what happened between the 7 years.
It's a long story. And it was reintroduced in 1934. And then in 1993, it was decriminalized to be gay in Russia. You saw a liberalization. And this liberalization was a general liberalization of the entire Russian society in the 1990s after the fall of the Soviet Union. And I think Nikolai was talking about this a little bit earlier. Then, in 2000, Putin came to power. And what we have seen is a very clear tendency away from the liberal 1990s towards more regulation, a more conservative society. And one of the examples of this more conservative societies is the tight bonds between the head of state and the head of the Orthodox Church. So 2006 is already a long way back when it comes to the development of Russia today. And there was a strong turn after Putin returned to power last year in the direction of more governmental control over civil society, a stronger control, and the law against propaganda of non-traditional sexual relations among minors is just one in a series of laws that have been introduced in Russia over the last couple of years. So we see a general development in Russia over the last 10 years towards a more authoritarian society, and we see a stronger regulation of the civil society from the side of the government.
I think we will take a break. And then later I really want to talk more about how Russia is turning more, or Putin's second term, actually I want to talk about. Also after the break we will allow questions and comments from the audience. So as I said earlier, please contact Anne, who sits in the first row. Then we will take a 15 minutes break. So I hope you will use the opportunity to ask the panel some questions. Thank you. Just before the break, we were talking about the changes in the Russian politics and how the society was turning more, in a different direction. And I was wondering, Nikolai, as the leader of the youth movement, do you feel a change in the political environment over these last years?
Yes, of course. I feel it, and I feel that changes especially after parliamentary elections of 2011 and presidential elections of 2012. Changes really start to show its faces in our country, because people, especially of course in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, they start to understand that something wrong, and start to understand that that government that they have nowadays are not legal, and the main thing, they start critically think, and start to realize the highest level of their Maslow pyramid. You know, maybe this triangle Maslow pyramid, pyramid of needs. That's the first level is basic needs of food, of drink, house. The second level, needs of protection. The third level, needs of education, and the highest level is the needs of self-realization. Unfortunately, nowadays in our country, most of our people wants to realize only the low level of this pyramid, only the basic needs. They need only flats, fancy car, good clothes, maybe a good job. They do not need to realize themselves.
I was wondering, you told me in the beginning that students nowadays is not that engaged in the LGBT rights movement. And what sort of issues do Russian students involve themselves in?
Students in our country, and I think that in most countries in Europe, they are rather passive, and they do not want to participate in socio-political life. They do not want to realize themselves from their social arena. But I think that only the students' groups, the students, is the most powerful force that can build the civil society. That's why we are trying to raise the students' community in St. Petersburg, in Moscow, and some small cities. What we are doing, we are organizing in different universities student self-government. We are trying to organize the group of students that will find and solve the problems on the places. What we are doing, we try to make students think, and if students start think, they start to solve the problems around him and start to become a member, the small bricks of the civil society. All we need in Russia nowadays is the strong and liberal-minded civil society. And I think from this base, from the student base, we can achieve it if we will go to the right way, if we will raise the right questions, and if we will do the right things.
Even though the students of St. Petersburg isn't very involved in gays' rights, the audience is.
Unfortunately.
So we have a lot of questions, and I wondered if you could just...
My name is Sophia. My question is, I read this article written by this journalist Masha Gersten, and she wrote that at first when she heard about this law, she thought of it as a joke, but then as it actually came through, she realized that as being a lesbian parent, she would have to flee Russia in order to keep her children, to keep custody of her children. And is this something that is actually, are you afraid that gay parents will lose their children? And my second question, is there a lot of gay people leaving Russia now? Thank you.
Vyacheslav, I know you've been working on parent custody for gays.
I understood the first question. The second was about...
It was about immigration.
Well, as to the first question, I should say that there is no such norm or such article that allows authorities to take children from same-sex couples, or if one parent has a child, and lives with other same-sex partner, there is no possibility to take this child away from this family. But some talks and some rumors exist about the adoption of the law which will allow authorities to take child from gay couples. But still, so far, it wasn't adopted, hasn't been. As to the second question about the possible ways to immigrate from Russia, well, it doesn't depend on Russian laws. It depends on the laws of the state where the person wants to go. So especially, particularly on the laws of Norway, for example, because Norway is very friendly for such asylum seekers, you know. Well, no one will stop people to immigrate from Russia, and the Russian authorities declare, if you want to go, you can leave our country.
But is it a lot who want to go?
Yes. After the law was adopted, the rate of people, the amount of people who want to immigrate from Russia increased. Increased.
I see there's a problem with the mic. Oh, okay, it's working. So could we please have the next question from the audience?
Hi, my name is Sten Mortensen. I study Russian here in Bergen, and I have 2 points. The first being, you said the law hasn't been taken into use yet. I think there's been a report of a Dutch television team in Siberia that have experienced, that were expelled because of the law when they were interviewing gay youngsters in the community about their experiences with homophobia. And the second being, I heard that the law also, and I read up on this, is sort of just a copy of a Thatcher law from 1988 called Section 28. And the law is actually word by word the same, that banned the promotion of untraditional relations or homosexuality for school children. And it's sort of ironic that the harshest critics of this law come from the country that's actually produced it to begin with. And I think that's a problem in the discourse generally, like the outrage when a lot of the homophobia in both in Africa and in Russia has actually been exported from European countries.
Vyacheslav, could you please explain for us the case with the Dutch?
Well, there was an attempt of using this law against Dutch citizens who tried to make a movie in Murmansk, but as I know, the law was not applied in this case, and they left the country without any charges. So I think that it was some kind of political way of solving this situation.
Martin, the second point you had with the homophobic laws being imported from Europe.
Yes, and I think it's a very important point when we look upon this in a global perspective, because what we in general tend to see, and what we discussed before the break here, was that the rights of the LGBT is considered to be something Western. So in many societies, in Russia, in Africa, we see that by local groups who oppose the rights of LGBT, we see that this argument is used. This is something Western. This is something that we don't want in our traditional societies. On the other hand, we see a very strong lobby, especially in the United States, a neoconservative, religious, often Protestant lobby that lobby against the rights of LGBT across the world. We see American pastors going to Uganda to promote a law that would make homosexuality a criminal offense. I talked to Nikolai and Vyacheslav earlier today, and we haven't seen examples of that very same thing going on in Russia. but I have seen news reports about that in Moldova. So there's a certain paradox. On the one hand, one sees a protection of traditional values, and on the other hand, one sees that these traditional values are protected and promoted with the help of people from the West. On the other hand, of course, these laws, I mean, being gay was illegal in Norway until the early 1970s. So we haven't come a very far way either. Or we have over some short few years. So we still have a long way to go. But that doesn't mean that we should not speak out against the breach of human rights in other countries. I mean, the fact that we had laws earlier that meant that being gay was illegal does not disallow us from speaking out against such laws in other countries today.
But it could mean that the question about the Russian culture being homophobic is too easy and...
It's very much simplification,
yeah.
Yes.
Could we please have another question?
Yes, we have a question related to this. Sorry, by Shuhaga Bringeland, and it concerns this culture, Well, his question is as follows. If you look back in the last 20 years of the Soviet regime, so we're back at that time, and if you were a civil servant or a senior party member, and you were caught for being a gay person, what would happen to you? What would your colleagues do to you if you were caught being gay back then?
I'm not sure any one of you is old enough to. But
I'm not a specialist in Soviet law. But as I remember, the sanction for the same sex was an arrest or detention for a couple of years. And but if you are a civil servant, probably you will avoid it. But it's not a legal question.
do you have anything to add, Martin?
Well, one thing that is documented, I mean, and this doesn't relate in particular to civil servants, but one practice that was used widely in the Soviet Union was to put people in the psychiatric hospitals. So the use of psychiatry to heal people was widespread, both from being oppositional, but also from being gay.
If the question askers would please go to Anne when they feel it's their turn.
My name is Dag Rune Olsen. I'm the rector at the university here in Bergen. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge Studentersamfunnet for initiating this immensely important debate. My question is related to the fact, well, now we've heard a lot about legal issues or the legislation in Russia today regarding the gay and lesbian issues. And of course, close to my heart is the welfare of students. And I'd like to ask you, to what extent do you feel that you have support from the university in St. Petersburg in these issues and the leadership at the university?
Nikolai, if I could ask you, what role do leadership play in Russia, at the university, leadership at the university?
Leadership, you mean administrative of university? Or do you mean?
Principal and...
principal of leadership.
Do you know who they are? Do you see anything of them?
The problem is that till, I guess, 2010, in the oldest university in our country, St. Petersburg State University, there wasn't any kind of government on a student level or on a professor level. There was only administration of university that make all decisions on students, on professors, and so on. But last 2 years, when the Russian Students' Union appeared, we start. I wasn't the chairman at the times, but we start to develop this kind of leaderships, small groups. First students, then it goes to the professors that start to organize and start to decide the problems on a local level. Already after the 2 years in St. Petersburg State University, we have a very powerful professors' union, some kind of labor union of professors that appeared only 2 years ago, and a very powerful students' organization inside every faculty of the university, with strong leaders and with a strong position on different points, and they can influence on the students' community of every faculty.
But as you say, they're not particularly interested in the LGBT rights.
This question of LGBT rights not rising on the university community, so...
But why not? Because there must be a lot of students who is gay.
Yes, but as I said, students, because they're students, they're more educated than that community that adopted this law, the older community. Students understand that if you're gay, most of them, they understand that if you're gay, if you're a member of LGBT community, you are more or less the same, and it's good, because if you look back, for example, to the community of the professors, maybe, they already may hesitate in this question. But students know they don't have these problems, and when they discuss it between themselves, between the equal ages, they understand that it's okay and it's not disease, it's not illness, it's equal people and so on. That's because they're much more educated than the elder people.
Martin, do you agree with that?
Well, I think it's a question of whether this is actually something that is discussed widely, and I think that's probably also what Nikolaitis is saying, that is this a question that is discussed widely in a university setting. But I don't think I have enough insight in the life inside the university in St. Petersburg or in Russia in general to say something very on that particular topic.
Vyacheslav, might I ask you, in LGBT network, do you ever notice anything from the leadership of the university?
No, we haven't, but I know about one case about one LGBT activist. It was known about him by nationalists that he studies in the one particular university in St. Petersburg, and they sent a letter to this university, and they told that he is an LGBT activist and he stands for LGBT rights. He participates in public demonstrates, public rallies. But as I know, the university didn't dismiss him. For that reason, he dismissed him for another reason. Officially. So I don't think that it's a problem within the university life.
And it wouldn't be obviously not a reason for being dismissed.
For a reason, yes, it's not. It can't be a reason for dismissal.
Because some might know that Scandinavia has a really close university cooperation with St. Petersburg. We have a university center there, which I visited. So the links to the St. Petersburg University are strong. Do we have another question?
Yeah, depending on how many you want. We have 3 more questions. Andreas Bakke.
Good evening. My name is Andreas Bakke. I study European Studies at the University in Bergen. Unfortunately, my knowledge of contemporary Russia is very poor. I'm a big history buff, so I remember the, Tsar Peter the Great's founding of St. Petersburg as this window in the west, and this huge, enlightenment project that he started. And I was wondering, are there still is St. Petersburg still kind of a more liberal city on Russian standards today? You mentioned places like Voronezh, and I imagine places like maybe Ekaterinburg or Vladivostok might be different from St. Petersburg.
Yes, I can say that St. Petersburg is one of the most liberal city in the whole Russia. We call St. Petersburg the cultural capital of Russia. That's why actually people who are living there, they are principally more educated than people who live in other cities or maybe in Moscow. And this spirit of culture, of education, of this academic spirit you can feel in St. Petersburg, and that is the reason why people there thinking more liberal, thinking more Western, and you know that 3 revolutions happened in St. Petersburg, and that's the good example that every changes the last century started in St. Petersburg, because people there are more active, more critically thinking, more passion, and they feel changes, and they feel the real situation more deeply, I think, and more shapely. That's why, yes, St. Petersburg is much more liberal than Moscow, for example.
But at the same time, this anti-propaganda law, who is passed through the Duma and then gets a federal law. First, it was passed as a regional law in 10 regions of Russia. And St. Petersburg was, as I understand, one of the first regions where the anti-gay law got passed.
One of the last.
Oh, really?
One of the last where this region law was passed. And after that, there was a federal.
But still, it is a point that it was passed in St. Petersburg, but not in Moscow.
Not in Moscow, yes. In Moscow, they said it contradicts Russian constitution.
And also the person who fronted the law in the National Congress, the Duma, he was from St. Petersburg, as I understand.
He's a member of St. Petersburg Parliament.
Oh, so he's not the Duma?
He's not a member of Russian State Duma.
Regional Parliament of St. Petersburg. That's another explanation once that St. Petersburg refers to in everything.
The initiative of the federal law came from Novosibirsk region.
Okay. Then I misunderstood you earlier. Of course, I imagine that a lot in the audience is thinking about the Winter Olympics. We had a lot of media coverage on it. And the reason for that is that this winter the Olympics will take place in the Russian town of Sochi. And a lot of people talk about boycotting the Olympics. I was wondering, what do you, Vyacheslav, think about that?
Well, as for me personally, I don't know the official position of my organization yet, but I'm against such boycott, just because it is not adequate step against such law. But I'm not against political activity at Olympic Games, though it can impose sanctions on the athletes.
Yes, we had the Norwegian member of the Olympic Committee, who's called Gerhard Heiberg. He was out in the media talking about that he wanted, that he respected the the law that, as the government said that they don't want any demonstrations, and he says that the Norwegians who come to Sochi, they must respect these laws.
To me, this is a big and a very difficult question. I think a boycott would be the wrong thing to do, especially because I think it would be ineffective. But I think it's important to make a political point made. And I don't think that we in Norway can change Russian laws. I don't think we have enough influence. I don't think neither Norwegian oil or fish will buy us enough influence in the Russian Duma to change Russian laws. But there is a very important, or there are two, I would say, two important points. First of all, it has been argued that when we speak out against the anti-gay law in Russia today, we intervene in internal affairs. That is wrong. This law is against all international agreements that Russia has signed on human rights. It is discriminatory, and it is against the freedom of expression. Those are very basic freedoms. These are freedoms that are guaranteed through the International Charter on Human Rights, and these are agreements that Russia have signed. So they are obliged to follow these agreements. That gives us the right to speak out every time they breach those agreements. And secondly, I think this is probably the most important point. I think it's important for the LGBT movement in Russia to feel our support, to understand that they are perfectly normal people and they are entitled to live together with the people they love, as gay people can do in Norway. So I think it's very important for us to send a signal to gay people in Russia that they are perfectly normal.
Could we have another question, please?
Yes, my name is Tora, and I'm from the local LGBT organization in Bergen. And my question is about the Olympics. My organization hasn't decided yet what we will recommend, a boycott or not. But we will listen carefully to what the Russian organizations tells us to do. But the similarities between what's happening in Russia today and the Nazi regime are quite alike, we think. It's not a Holocaust yet, but it's very similar to what happened in the early days of the Nazi regime. So what do you think is the best approach for the Norwegian organization towards the Olympics?
I would allow the other two participants on the panel the chance to say something, but I think my personal advice would be not to compare what is happening in Russia today with Nazi Germany, because talking about Nazi Germany in Russia today is like waving a red flag in front of any Russian. It is very, very provocative. And secondly, I don't think the comparison is relevant, because it's still legal to be gay in Russia today. People are not persecuted by the government in Russia today for being gay. So it's a very big difference what is happening at this moment in Russia and what happened in Nazi Germany. So I think one should be careful with not overstating the points.
Nikolai, what do you think about a boycott of the Olympics?
At first, from the very beginning, I was against the Olympic Games in Sochi. It's a very long story, because it's one of the most corrupted projects in the last few years in Russia. You know that the most expensive Olympic Games was in Bergen. It cost 4 billion euros. the Olympic Games in Sochi cost 30, close to 30. Just imagine there, how a lot of money will be stolen by known people. But as for boycott, I totally against boycott to boycott Olympic Games by Norway or other countries, because maybe my position is rather pure, but I think that when it goes, when we talk about sport and when we talk about these kind of events, historical events, and you know that since ancient times when the Olympic Games start, the war stopped. And I think that political issues and social problems have not been raised in this period. And okay, we have Olympic Games. Let's hold it and forget about it. But do not do these steps. Just remember when it was were Olympic Games in the Olympic Games in Moscow in the 18th, and when United States and 10 or 15 countries boycott these games, and wasn't the result? Nothing. After 10 years, only the Soviet Union crashed, but we spoiled the relations with many countries in that period. I think that sport is one, and the Olympic Games is one of that moment when all of us can say stop, say silence, and just watch, and nothing more. And I think it's a very good decision for all nations and for all countries. And we have to assemble. We have to be together in this week, and to feel the unique of assemble, to be all together. That's what I think.
What you mean about the Olympics. As I understand, it's the last question.
Hi, my name is Martin Uter. I'm from the Norwegian Olympic and Paralympic Committee and Confederation of Sports. Some of the questions I had has already been discussed, and I think this is a great debate about what Gerhard Heiberg said. He said something that we have to approve the laws, but we let's rephrase. He said that I mean, in the Olympic Charter that gives Russia the Olympics, they cannot discriminate against any means, and we want to fight that, of course. But we cannot. The same charter says that we cannot propaganda or do any political propaganda in the Olympics against it. So we cannot fight one. I mean, going against the charter in both ends would not make all right. The second thing is we are now pointing towards Russia. Some of the students of the University of Bergen pointed towards us on our attitude towards homosexuality, and many of us raised our hands when we knew someone, a gay or lesbian person. In this study, very quickly, says that 95% of women are positive or neutral to lesbians, equally amount to gays, whereas men are 84% positive or neutral to lesbians and 70% gay, 72% towards gays. What's interesting here is that when they were asked later in the survey, they were asked, sex between two women is simply wrong. 17% said they agree. So it's not 5% anymore, it's 17. 24% for men. And sex between two men is simply wrong. 4% of the men said they agree to this. So we point towards Russia, but sometimes we have to point towards ourselves to see that, well, we might be LGBT positive or neutral, but are we really? That's the question. Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder. And thank you, our guests, for coming here. I'm glad we didn't scare you off with all our rituals at the beginning. And I would also like to thank the audience for coming here today. We have our traditional the Student Society gift, the umbrella, which I hope you can take with you on the plane tomorrow. And for the audience, I would urge you all to take with you the program for the semester. We have a lot of exciting debates coming up. And you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. So I hope to see you all again. I hope to see you again soon. And thank you very much for coming.